Welcome everyone to our forecasting masterclass. We understand it is a tricky time of the year. Everyone's doing the rush to the end of the year at the moment. So if you're able to join us today, well done. That means that you're putting as a priority working on the business rather than getting too tangled up in it, or you're just trying to do the juggle of both. Let's go. So as I said, we are doing forecasting today. This is our masterclass for November. I'll share my screen and we can kick off into the content. This one here. Okay, so in terms of what we're covering today, we are unpacking forecasting. So why do you need a good forecast? We're going to break down what a good forecast looks like, what are the components that are involved, and then a bit more practical around how to build a good forecasting system. Dan's going to move between conceptual ideas around forecasting, particularly in the front end of the session, but then also as much as we can as well, make it more practical. This is a big gnarly topic, so we're going to do our best to cover as much as we can in the hour, but it is something that is a pretty heavily involved part of what we do in construction. And so if there are questions, please put them into the chat. If we don't get to all the questions, or if there's something that you're still confused about after the session, we will have a poll at the end. You can book some time with us in a one-to-one kind of nature, which I think is a bit better than this sort of, skating across the surface approach that we have to do in these sessions. But hopefully still you take some good nuggets out of what we're going to cover today. In terms of housekeeping, please, as I said, drop the questions into the chat as we go. I'll be having a look at those and pulling Dan up politely where I can so that we can cover off on those questions. The video will be available after today, hopefully this afternoon. If not, it'll be out tomorrow. Along with, we put together a bit of a checklist. I love checklists. So we've put together one that I guess allows you to assess what components you've got in place when it comes to best practice in this forecasting space. So hopefully that's helpful. So that'll be available as well. We'll be running polls. There's one poll at the beginning just to get our heads in the game. And I wanted to do a reminder that, when we talk about this stuff, it comes from a place of experience, having worked with businesses. It sounds a bit theoretical at times, but there's a lot of kind of experience that sits behind this. There's a survey as well at the end. So please, when you leave, the survey will pop up. We'd love to hear from you. We really enjoy doing these sessions. We're always trying to make them better. So please make some suggestions for us. That'd be great. So just a little bit of background on Xact. If this is your first time coming in contact with us, we've got 4 building blocks to our service. There's a structural foundation piece. This is all about tax and compliance, making sure you've got the right structure in place for your business, not just now, but as you're growing. And that's particularly the case for construction businesses who are also wanting to, maybe move into their own developments and things like that. Just really making sure that your structure is what it should be. We have a bookkeeping service. It's all about, as it says there, accurate and timely data. You can't understand and know what's going on in your business if you don't have accurate data. You'll always be guessing and questioning whether what you're looking at from a reporting perspective is actually the case. So we do that in a specialised way for the construction industry as an outsourced service, also giving you a bit of time back, hopefully. Then we have a service called Financial Control. So this is a monthly reporting service. It focuses on things like WIP and making sure that your WIP calculations are accurate. There's a big budgeting piece in there as well. Some of the content we're going to cover today around forecasting is involved in that service as well. And then finally, we have a service called ScaleX, which is all about growth. It's all about taking your business that may be doing this curve here, so forwards, backwards, etc., and potentially feeling a bit limited in terms of what your growth potential is. we allow you to think about growing to a much larger number, that not being a scary thing, because you have us alongside you to help achieve that growth and to do it in a shorter time frame than if you do it the sort of, as we like to say, the DIY way. These are all the different areas we cover off on: people, operations, finance, and sales and marketing. And our advisory team, who are all, everyone's probably familiar with tax accountants. These guys are commercial accountants, so they've been CFOs, FCs, general managers, own their own businesses, some of them CEOs. So they really have worked in business rather than more traditional tax accounting. And because of that, they have this really awesome lived experience working in businesses, helping achieve those outcomes. So that's the team. We hope you get to meet them in your journey. Okay, I'm going to run this first poll just to get us started. So we just want to get a sense of where everyone's at in their forecasting journey. So there's a few questions here. The first one's a rating one. So how confident are you in your current cost to complete forecasts across all jobs? So this is trying to get a solid forecast on these projects here. How much is left coming down the pipe in terms of costs, and how accurate do you think your current gauge of that is? So how confident are you? 0 up to 10. The next one is, how often do you update your job forecasts? So I'm not really forecasting, I'm doing it every day, I do it weekly, or I'm doing it monthly is the next one there. And then this is all well and good, what we're covering today, forecasting, but what's stopping you from doing it? And I'm sure a lot of you on the call today probably have a good foundation in terms of what you need to know to do better forecasting, but what's stopping you in terms of being able to achieve good forecasting in your business? And yes, that's a multiple choice. You could be going wrong on all of those as options. So I thought that would be good just to kind of get our heads in the game a little bit there. In terms of how people have responded, I might just share those results. Here we go. So how confident? This is good to see. We've got a bell curve happening around the 6, 7, 8. But generally it's pretty spread. And we've got a fair few people down the bottom of the curve there too. Alarmingly, we've got 20% of the people on the call not forecasting at all. So hopefully after today, we've given you a good reason and some ideas as to how to go about that. The reasons why, it's spread. It really is all of these things, all of these reasons that are preventing people. So again, today, hopefully we can help you on that journey to better forecasting. Okay, that is enough from me. Dan, I'm going to hand it over to you, mate, and I'll just jump in from time to time when we get questions coming through the chat.
Yeah, please, Phil. And thanks to Woman for carving out a bit of time, obviously, for this session. Please drop in questions as we go. Make the most of your time. A fair chunk of this will be theoretical with some practical applications. But again, we are focusing on the future and forecasting. Again, because you can't change the past. That should be about 10% of your time and focus on where that goes, but we can influence the future. And that's the concept behind forecasting. So before we jump in, I just want to talk about this thing called the construction game. And the construction game is we take people, materials with a set of plans, a contract, and a bunch of money and build something over time that's never been built before in an environment and with people we don't have full control over. So I just wanted us to relay that first. Like, there are a tremendous amount of moving parts in this construction game. And there's a lot of things outside our control, but there's a tremendous amount that we can influence overall. So that is the concept, I guess, of this webinar moving forwards. So jumping into the first piece, what is forecasting? So the concept behind forecasting is that it's not a pretty set of spreadsheets, but it is a system to best predict where the business is going ahead. It's not about being perfect. It's not, obviously it's about being real, and it doesn't matter whether it's good, bad, or ugly. We have to know what the future looks like. If it's good, it validates the gut feel and emotion. If it's bad, well, how do we gather our leadership team together to change and influence the future? That is the concept behind it. So what is forecasting? So everyone here will have a plan. Like this is the set of plans. This is the drawing. This is the budget. This is your contract. This is your build schedule. And that's going to be absolutely your baseline to deliver, I guess, this set project, whether it's a residential build or a reno or a multi-res tower, whatever it happens to be. But you have to have some sort of plan, which I think most people on the call will have. Here's our costs. Here's our PC date. Here's our start date. And that's what we're aiming for. Now, as a project unfolds, we're going to bump into these things called actuals. So we're assuming that you have good bookkeeping disciplines. Hopefully you have a really good piece of builder software in the background that helps you track actuals to a budget, or I guess a cost profile, or your work breakdown schedules. Or as you are letting packages, you can measure whether you are going under or over against them, which then leads into, well, what's your learnings? So as you are progressing through a project, you have your plan, you have your actuals, you're measuring yourself against it. Well, what are your learnings that are coming out of that? What's changed since you started? For example, maybe a subby's pulled out, or prices have moved, or productivity's dipped, which I'm seeing a fair bit of at the moment. What are our learnings? So let's just take a moment to look back in the rear vision mirror and go, well, what are our learnings? Because again, 90% of the project will be on track and on time, depending on what sort of space you operate in. But it's the stuff that is going wobbly, or I guess contracts or trades or labor. It's the ones that have risk growing, and where we are coming off the rails a little bit. What are our learnings out of that? And then the most important piece is that we take those learnings, take those actuals, and we go, well, what does the future look like? So when we are looking at the future, like, are our trades on schedule? Has our PC date, has that not moved? Or if it has moved, what does that mean? So what we want to do here is start looking at the future and go, well, based on what we've done to date versus what's the future look like, how does that compare to our original plan? And the hardest piece in the forecasting process, again, we don't want it to be a spreadsheet or I guess like an Excel document. It's a tool to make sure that your business is in control, it's focused, and we have a direction that we're heading towards, and how do we measure ourselves against that plan? So the big bit is, well, what's the call to action when you put together this forecast? What does it mean? What do you do? If something is going a little bit sideways, what do we do as a leadership team? And then document the action, document who's going to own that action, or I guess where that accountability sits. You fold that into the new plan, and then you rinse and repeat, rinse and repeat. That is forecasting. So this is why it matters. So forecasting is absolutely control plus profitability. And jobs rarely blow up overnight, but they do drift off course slowly. And I heard a great quote recently. So how do you burn profit? Well, it's one day at a time and $1 at a time. And that sort of really stuck with me. I heard that sort of like last month, actually. So again, I'll just repeat that one. So how do you burn profit? Well, it's one day at a time, and it's $1 at a time. So what does all this mean on paper? A job might look fine at the start. It's easy enough to get jobs out of the ground, whatever happens to be, slapped down. But until the cash dries up and margins disappear, that's when stuff can get really wobbly. So regular forecasting gives you early warning signs to course correct before the pain hits your business and hits you. And I guess just a question to ask yourself over the top, because everyone's going to have a couple of great war stories, or I guess projects that have gone a little bit average, or you didn't make the margin you set out to make, or the client experience wasn't great either. But the question you need to ask yourself is, if you knew 6 months earlier what was coming at you, what would you have changed? That's the key bit. So putting forecasting into visuals, I quite like infographics, visuals. I like getting out my crayons to help me sort of understand pictures and frameworks. So the best way to explain it is, and to summarize, I guess, the conversation to date is, well, we always start with our job plan. The now line is where we're sitting immediately. So hopefully we have really good actuals, we have really good job costing, really good bookkeeping, and that's the owner's responsibility. Just to be really clear, that's not the bookkeeper's responsibility. We need to take interest in our money and obviously defend that margin. We then take a breath and go, where are we sitting at now across these projects? What does our forecast look like? So what's our plan plus our actuals? And the big thing I want to know is, where are our unders and overs? sitting. So for example, if you have a WBS, or I guess you're about to let out the plumbing package for 100K and it comes in at 100K, couldn't care to budget and move on. But like if that plumbing package comes in at 130K and you're only due to spend 100 on it, well, guess who's going to jump up and down? And guys, well, project managers, site supervisors, what's our course to correct? What are we doing? Which then leads to our call to action. What do we do with this information? How do we obviously retain and defend that margin? Or can we readjust the schedule so we can try and get some margin back in the business or try and pull back time? Because there's two major levers to make money in the construction game. One is obviously cost control. This is what we think we're going to spend versus what we're actually going to spend, and more importantly, where we think we'll land. And the other lever is time. So we can pull contracts back. So instead of, a job landing in 12 months, how do we get it to 10 and a half months? So there's still the same bundle of gross profit. Your prelims and site supervision are covered over a 10.5 month period. And then how do we get our additional start in there as well, get our next job off the ground? And they're all the questions we need to ask once we have a really good forecasting model. Well, what do we do? So all those questions I touched on then, and they're the questions you want to have with your leadership team overall. So I'm covering a bit of ground at a bit of pace. So I've talked about why it's important. Obviously, I've lensed around, the past, the plan, where we're up to, and then where do we go. I'd probably just want to get down into the weeds a little bit and just talk about a live project example. And a lot of people on the call already know a lot of this stuff anyway, but just try and pick up the concepts of what I'm trying to say, because it's more the discipline of the look forward. That's what's going to keep you out of danger as opposed to the process itself. Because this whole piece is a leadership tool overall. It's not a spreadsheet, but yeah, it's definitely a leadership tool to drive accountability and make sure we are hitting our plan. So this is a live project example. So what we have here is that we have costs incurred for a active project, and I'm just looking at one project now. So we have actual cost to date of 800,000. So per our master construction schedule, per our original estimate job, this is where we should be up to on the plan. So that first dotted blue line, that is the now. Now, when we are looking at our forecast complete, and again, if you think about those widgets we talked about before, we want to try and gather our actuals to date, good, bad, or ugly. And as you can see here, we should have only spent $800,000 on this project per the master construction schedule, but we've come in at $900,000 overall, which obviously doesn't sound great. We're bleeding margin, burning time. And what we've had our construction administrator or project manager dig into is that we had our block works go over for a variety of reasons. We won't get into them now. But the block work, we've had some overruns. And on top of that, we've had a time delay too of, let's call it a couple of weeks, which is a killer. It's an extension of obviously prelims on site supervision. Obviously, it impacts the client experience as well. There's nothing worse, promising a date and going, oh yeah, sorry, that's moved out another 3 weeks, especially in that resi game, or if you're in that commercial industrial space, liquidated damages, there's risk of getting a kick up the arse with stuff like that. And then what happens is that let's gather all this information, then look forwards. So we've looked in the past, we've gathered all that information that's relevant to our business and relevant to that job. Now we do a forecast out and go, well, how does that, stack against our original plan, our original budget, which is the most important part here, because we can't change the past, but we can influence the future. So it's that old 90-10 rule, 10% rear vision mirror, 90% looking at the front windscreen. So as we can see here, we have that budget piece up the top. The forecast complete is that big blue bar down the bottom, and we can see the impact of the cost delay. And you can see that, that final red line out to the far right-hand side, that's the impact of the time delay. Because even though it is time, there is absolutely a cost associated with that. So whether it's site supervision or the delay of the next project, what happens to be, there is a double whammy that happens with this piece. So the important, the concept behind this is that good businesses, especially larger builders, will do this process monthly. Stop, gauge, remeasure, look forward, stop, gauge, remeasure, move forwards. Or if you are, a bit of a smaller builder as well, doing this concept or doing this process and discipline weekly, that'll be the game changer. Hopefully that makes a bit of sense. And again, this is just more the concept to look forward. So look backwards, measure, look forwards, measure, and then what is it, good, bad, or ugly? Just the other piece I wanted to talk with as well is that if you're a bit unsure where to start, or your tech stack makes it a little bit hard to obviously try and measure the go forwards, there's a huge administration burden. I'd even sort of start with just like a basic pen and paper. Don't overcomplicate it. Don't get lost in the data and the detail. Just have your best crack at the look forwards, because that is absolutely where you will move the needle in your business. Don't drown in the data. Close enough will be good enough, and then creep up on that over time. And I guess the other, I guess, pieces to run alongside this is similar when you go to the gym for the first time. You try a new bit of equipment. You're a bit unsure. It looks complex and scary. But as you do it 3, 4, 5, 6 times, you get more comfortable, it gets easier, you build muscle memory, and forecasting is no different. If you're caught in the weeds of looking backwards, yeah, you absolutely need to focus on the future, just to repunctuate that point. So once you, I guess, are in a bit of a cadence and a rhythm of doing this job by job, and again, it might not apply to every single, I guess, builder or trader on the call. Like if you're trying to do 120 bathrooms a month, or I guess you have 120 of those on the go, you might sort of skim across the service. But if you're doing 2 towers, I would encourage you to get, I guess, caught in the detail a little bit and try and build that up and make sure that, I guess, the future's fine. But once you have done that process job by job, this screen here is what you want to look at to try and bring all that stuff together. I commonly find that business owners, or I guess senior leaders, are really good at the job by job stuff, but you do need to have a helicopter view and go, well, these are our active jobs. These are the ones that are looking red hot to start with us. Here's some other like warm leads. These are the parcels of gross profit they're looking to drop in. If we bring all this together, is my business okay? And then the most important thing is that look ahead into the future, because the past could be good or bad. You can't move that needle, but looking forwards, is the business okay? So this piece here is assuming that you have run through your projects. You've obviously measured how they're performing, each of them. So whether you've got 2 projects or 10 projects, the discipline's monthly or weekly if you're a bit smaller. And what we want to do here is go, well, each of these projects are due to drop in a certain amount of margin over a certain period. And again, I know there's going to be ups and downs with claims and all the rest of it. I want to try and sort of get, I guess, avoid getting lost in those weeds. If we have the start of the project and the end of the project, and we're looking at that forecast complete, each of these jobs are going to deliver a parcel of gross profit, one way or another. Some months might be less, some months might be small, but here's our timeline. So some are going to deliver, I guess, gross profit in this patch, slide and move. And then as you do map that out top to bottom, and I guess you do this remeasure monthly, pick up your hot jobs. And then if you come down to the very bottom, it'll give you an accurate picture as to whether you're generating profit or not. So the concept is that if you micro measure gross profit to within an inch of its life, cash will follow. So as long as you're managing the schedule, managing the trades, managing on-site labor, prelims, you're defending that PC date, profit will follow 9 times out of 10, minus a volcano or a hurricane or something like that. So in this instance here, we have our 3 active jobs at the top. We're really clear on when they sort of start and end. We know what gross profit they're going to deliver in each month. There's a couple of hot jobs on there as well. So we start to bring in the existing operational functions, grab in the sales functions as well, bring those together and go, well, based on our starts and our timing, is the future okay? That's what we want to try and get out of a business-wide forecast. So this here can also drag and I guess create urgency around when we need that next start. It can also give visibility around, well, if we have internal labor or chippies on site, or you might have a few trades internalized, when do we need our next start there? And it can create urgency to go, well, we need to get this contract signed by X date. Or we have a PC date looming in 4.5 months' time, and you've been still in the weeds of, I guess, operational handover, hitting that PC date, making sure the client has a good experience on the tail end, but then you take your eye off the ball as far as sales goes. So they're the questions you need to ask with a really, really, really good business-wide forecast. How are we tracking? Add on the other sales opportunities. What sort of GP are those going to deliver? And this can be fluid because you could be in the negotiation phase for the next bundle of work, but keep measuring, keep dropping these in because you want to make sure that the future is looking all right.
Dan, there's no question, so I'm just going to jump in. I mean, obviously, you're showing this is just a model, that we've got on the screen here, and it's not indicative, I guess, of what real numbers are going to be flying through a business. That's they're going to be chopping and changing depending on stages, etc. We've just sort of made a bit of a generalization here, as well as the way that overheads are eating away at gross margin. and at the end, our net profit, is showing reasonably, it's a reasonable curve there. We're not hitting any dark areas in terms of, going into the red. This tool, though, once you've got this built out, and there's a whole lot of different ways, we're being quite general on purpose here because everyone has a different tech stack. Everyone has, different software involved. A lot of people are using tech stack and then pushing into Excel. They may have, business analytics tools that they're using. We're talking about a concept here. But if I was, looking at something like this using my own tool set, this would allow us to be able to see those, I'm about to go into the red moments, Dan. Yeah. That's usually what we're trying to use this tool for.
Yeah, correct. So again, we want to base our forecast off, science, evidence, data, what's a hot opportunity, what's a weak opportunity, bundle them together and make sure we are generating significant profit, or I guess sustainable profit in the future. And again, contracts will come and go. But I mean, let's just say, for example, 2 of those hot jobs fell off and you're looking down the barrel of red months or, very, very, very minimal profit for, I guess in 6 months' time, there's a call to action there to go, righto, sales team, or if you're the owner, you're commonly selling as well. You need to dial down operations or dial down somewhere and change gears and then focus on sales and filling that pipe. That's the call to action around this, because the way sophisticated reporting works in a business, it's less around the numbers and the data. What's the story? What is the story that it tells? This report I'm looking at, how's it singing to me? Are all my carpentry crew is going to be busy? If profit does fall off a cliff, well, what's the size of my next project I need to bring on board? And then that can give you focus to go chasing that next parcel of work to push into this forecast and go, yep, me and my family are going to generate wealth. That's how you interpret this whole process. Hopefully that makes sense.
Yeah. So, but we've got to have those fundamentals in place in terms of, this is how I've traveled so far. These are my new jobs that are coming through. So that, in addition to my currently contracted work, is at the bottom going to be, this GP, and then my overheads are going to eat out of that, and then therefore this is what I'm going to have at the end of the day. And there's a whole lot of different ways of going about that, but we must be able to see the signed work, how we're traveling with that, plus pipeline, and we need to see that over a timeline so that we can see into the future and see, where those problems are going to occur, or, in a better world, which is where we all want to be, how we're tracking in terms of our growth targets for net profit. So, we sort of talked about this from almost a more negative perspective. And I guess we've seen that, with builders being really challenged around, profitless booms and times like that. But really, this is also a tool to say, I had a goal in terms of my net profit 6 months from now. Am I still on track for that in terms of my current work and then what I've got coming through the pipe? Yes, there's a question there just to us about tools for this. Yeah, we've got some good tooling around this. What I said before, though, it really does depend on your tech stack and, what software you're using, et cetera, the access to the data, as well, the accuracy of that data and the information you're getting from site. But we're going to launch into that, I think is coming up next, Dan.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Phil. Fair question. So now we're going to come a little bit higher level and talk about, well, how do we build a really good forecasting system? So as I touched on earlier, people plus process plus internal systems equal a leadership tool, not just the task. If you're filling out a spreadsheet for the sake of filling out a spreadsheet, it'll lose value. You'll get frustrated with it, put it in the top drawer, and then go charge on site. So it's absolutely a leadership tool first and foremost. And as far as the stack goes, as to like building up a really good forecasting system. So again, it's not about tasks, well, how do we get this system up and running? And I will be doubling up on some content here, but I really want to hammer this home. If you look down the bottom left-hand quadrant, there's a scope of work and the dollars completed to site. So we need to get that information from somewhere, whether it's from site, from people, from your construction software, I don't know, like a Build Xact, Procore, Job Pack, whatever it happens to be. But we need to get that facts, evidence, and data and measure ourselves to date. the bottom right quadrant as well. What does the future look like? What's left on our scope of work, and what's the dollar left to complete per contract? Most important. So that includes variations, provisional sums, and all the rest of it. So we need to quantify that and grab that, and then obviously push that out to the future. And then the next two pieces are really important if you want to build a machine and not be the machine. So you absolutely need the right people in the right roles and really, really, really strong communication. So the amount of people, I guess the amount of exit interviews I've done with people and go, why are you leaving? Well, they're either quick bosses or it's poor communication. So don't underestimate the importance of those communication drivers, and obviously having the right people in the right roles. I'll talk about that, and I guess in a little bit shortly, but just give that some good thought. You might have a niggle going, well, this site supervisor's, amazing on the tools, but he's rubbish at the leadership piece. So just be a bit careful. You might have the right person, but wrong role, but I'll let that simmer in the background as well. So the concept is right people, right role to drive communication. And the piece at the top, this is probably one of the more important pieces, is just the cadence and discipline. So cadence is just a fancy word for these are the repetitive tasks I'm doing every Monday. These are the repetitive tasks I'm doing fortnightly. These are the repetitive tasks I'm doing monthly. This is how I communicate, and this is the method of communication out there. So if your forecasting process is weekly on a Thursday, bloody make sure you do it weekly on a Thursday. If it's monthly, 3 days after the end of the month, just get into that process of doing it. Because the moment, I guess, you as a leadership team, whoever's on the call now, stops driving it, that's where the focus comes off. That's where the drive comes off. And then that's where the bus will hit you. Absolutely. So to stay disciplined, stay repetitive, stay focused. That's the concept behind that. I guess the top of the triangle here. The other big piece, and again, this isn't just for forecasting, but this is across the business. This is the formula to drive a high performance building and construction business. And there are three key elements, so I guess driving us forwards. You absolutely need all three across the business. So commonly, not one person is going to wear all three of these hats or have all three of these attributes, but you do need component parts depending on the certain roles that you have in the business as well. So these are the qualities that you need to drive your building construction business forwards. So the first piece is around commerciality. So a fancy buzzword, but what that means is, do the people that you have on site understand the cost drivers, understand contract timing, understand how to motivate and engage trades to do a good job first time, every time. They understand how the defect process works. They understand how, I guess, extensions of time work as well on site, how they capture variations, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. The next piece is obviously building, and everyone on the call will have that aspect. Can you build a good building? Do you know how it goes together, how to read site plans? Can you stick to a solid scope of work and the specifications and do it right the first time? So commonly, a lot of people will have that, especially if you are sort of early on in your building construction journey. And then the final piece, which is absolutely critical, and I really want to hammer this home, is the administration. So the administration isn't the bookkeeping or receipts and stuff like that. It's around, I guess, contracting and variations. How do you capture those? And obviously make sure they're enforceable to the client. Obviously don't do the work until the variation's signed. So I've seen it time and time again, builders charge on the vary because they're trying to please the client and make sure the client has a positive experience. And then towards the end, the client pushes back and says, well, no, you did that. I'm going to pay you half, for example. So I had that incident recently where someone pushed on like a fireplace down in Victoria. They installed it. It cost them 60 grand. And the client goes, no, you made enough money. I haven't signed off anything. I'll give you half the cost. No reason, no formula, no documentation, but the builder got stung with a $30,000 plus margin hit to their P&L, which obviously then affects the forecast completely and go, righto, that hurt. How do we avoid that going forwards next time? Well, the right administration in place. So please don't leave that behind. It is super important, especially as you scale and get bigger. So commerciality, building and administration, you need that formula in place to drive your business, and that's going to help drive forecasting and looking into the future. And then the final piece, bringing all this together as far as your success stack goes, there's communication, input, reporting structure, and then the timing and discipline around that. So the comms and inputs obviously bring the forecast together to make sure the future is okay. So I'll come back a step. All the moving parts to bring in, I guess, bring your forecast together, make sure that the future is okay. We've touched on communication, right people, right role. We have a sophisticated bookkeeping process to sort of capture actuals to date, and we have a strong, commercially minded, builder focused, administration focused forecast process to bring it all together and go, are we okay? Yes or no? So the comms and input, we need to receive that information back from on site and from clients. But for example, with comms and inputs, are all of our variations flagged? Are they in? Are they documented? Have we got sign off? If there are any schedule changes on site, so either the critical path has changed on site for certain trades, or the PC dates moved out, or there's a wet weather event, how are they being documented and controlled? If there is cost pressure in the business, how do we get that information from site? Whether it's a site foreman, project manager, whoever, get it back to the back office or get it back to headquarters and go, hey, we've got this rate change coming. Could be on plasterboard, could be on someone doing the service. How do we get the information back in? How do we get it well communicated and well documented so we then can see the future? Don't ignore it. Don't bury it. I mean, we want to see the bus coming so we can act accordingly. What we want to avoid here is one of my probably favorite sayings, the no surprise rule. Surprises in business are rarely good news. It's commonly the other way, and that can really kill relationships on site, kill relationships with clients who want to try and get ahead of that piece. So all that piece is around communication inputs. How do we get that back in so we can look at our forecast and predict the future?
Obviously, Dan, that becomes even harder, as you have multiple jobs on the go. This is the conundrum in this game that, as you scale, can't be everywhere, can't be, Johnny on the spot at every job. What are the, I guess, challenges when it comes to getting truthful information from what's happening on site from your team? Because I know sometimes, there can be this sort of fear of telling the boss that something went wrong. How much of that can be, almost a cultural thing?
Yeah, really, really, really good question, Phil. So there's two elements behind it. One is obviously, and this is for a wider conversation, I have to talk about it separately, but there's a values alignment. We like truth and honesty and integrity and all the other bits, right? So if you have a culture of, if something goes wrong on site and you pick up the phone and scream at people, or give them a kick up the ass or threaten them that they'll lose their job, like, why would I want to volunteer that? I'm going to sit in the dark room and try and figure it out myself. You want to try and avoid that at all costs, because you get 4 or 5 of those on the go at critical junctions on the job, and multiply that by 4 or 5 jobs. And we don't have a culture of being open and honest and, I guess, being held to account. That's going to be an absolute killer for the business. And the other bit I like on the other side is that we want to replace gut feel and emotion. I think the job's going okay. She'll be right. I drove past it 2 weeks ago. It looks okay. We want to go the other way and get facts, evidence, and data to support that the job's okay. For example, sorry to pick on plumbers, but like you might have had the plumbing package done or the hydraulics package done recently. Well, I want to see photos, evidence, especially if the job is remote. I want to see the photos are done, it's signed off, defect free, etc., etc. So give me evidence that it is done correctly. So they're probably the 2 major parts. You need to create a culture of openness, good, bad, or ugly. You're not going to get crunched. Obviously, it's a performance issue, it's slightly different, but if there's a challenge on site, you want to know about it, so then you can act on it and go, well, what do we do as a team to fix it? So yeah, good question, Phil. And facts, evidence, data.
Yeah.
Give evidence that's installed correctly, delivered correctly, whatever happens to be. The reporting and structure to support this whole forecasting process as well. So we're talking about the forecasting process, but we're trying to build other disciplines in your business. So obviously it increases the efficiency, deliverability, the profitability as well. So there's other beautiful processes that come out of this. So not just the forecasting process, but in a perfect world, you are running weekly work in progress meetings. So what that means is that you review the work that's been done for the prior week and go, well, inside the next 2 weeks, what does our call forward look like? So here's our critical path on the schedule. Obviously, to get the windows in, we need these 3 other things being done. What does that look like? And then those little micro huddles across those jobs can feed up to headquarters, or I guess the back office, or I guess like the head office function. And then we can remeasure how the future looks like. So those weekly call forward meetings, are we defending costs? Yes or no? Are the trades, I guess, being ordered and obviously deployed at the right times in the future? Yes or no? And then obviously, are those dates being preserved as well? So it could be slab, here's a critical date. Could be frame, here's a critical date. Could be roofing, here's a critical date. Are those protected? Because if those dates and times move out, it's easy to tear up a lot of money, 1 day at a time, $1 at a time. Obviously, the master schedule aligns with your costs as well, because it's all well and good moving the schedule around. Well, what's the impact on costs? And the other thing I want to just, I guess, flag with reporting and structure is the amount of times I've either been out the site or I've talked to builders, or I guess like the second layer down, PMs and CMs, and they're running off an old version of construction plans. It could be version 5 they're running off, but they should be running off version 7 because the architect's made changes or something's happened. The amount of time I see that on the go, yeah, it's, I'm just trying to think of the right word, but it's abhorrent, I think is probably the right one. You've got these plans, here's where we are, and communication's not coming back through on site. So I just can't highlight how important that is. One source of truth, one set of plans, everyone's clear on it, get that right going forwards. And then the final piece is, well, timing and discipline. So if you are running your business to a schedule, I mean, you will be on site, obviously, for job by job, start and critical dates. But the same applies to the back office function as well. So guys, here's our cutoff for end of month. Here's getting all the invoices in so we know exactly where we're sitting. We want to close off our end of month by day 5, workday 5 after end of month, have our forecast done by workday 7, and we want to have our leadership team meeting by workday 9. That is the calendar. They are the days we are charging towards. If you haven't got discipline around the timing, whether it's back office or on site, again, $1 at a time, 1 day at a time. That's what creeps in. Information is flowing on schedule. We aren't acting reactively. There's no drift, no delays, no excuses, and we are solutions focused and go forward focused. That's how you run a sophisticated forecast and a sophisticated business.
So Dan, there's a bit of chat in the chat at a real kind of deep in the weeds around different systems and how do we track costs, etc. That's a webinar for a whole other day. But from a fundamentals perspective, what do you need to see at the data level to be able to have your forecasting, as bulletproof as we need it to be? If I'm using a Build Xact or a Builder Trend or whatever the case might be, what are the real fundamentals that we need to have in place?
Yeah, really good question. So it doesn't matter what tech stack you're using. I mean, all of them have strengths and weaknesses. But I guess in larger business, which is all we're trying to do here, is go, well, what's a larger business doing that we're not? In a perfect world, the way you estimate is quite a bit different to how you sort of let packages out at a job cost. So for example, when you're doing the estimating or you're doing the stick frame, you're going to have multiple lengths of wood, multiple line items, multiple this, and there could be 50 or 60 different line items just to get the frame up. And then if you outsource a carpentry package, you're generally going to have one line in there and say, look, this is the parcel of work. Here is the scope. Here are the selections. And you let out that one parcel of work in there. So what we want to try and do with the whole job costing piece is that it has to be measurable. So if you have one process here that has 84 lines and that's how you estimate, which is fine, when the cash starts flying around all over the place, well, how do you measure yourself against that? That's the critical bit. Because if you have one invoice coming in from the plumber or I guess the outsourced carpentry gang, and it says $48,932, and you have an estimating process, which is a little bit here and a little bit here and a little bit here. I mean, the clarity goes from great to zero pretty quickly. So you want to try and have a firm handle on it, and it has to be measurable. That is the key component. So once either the footings are done or the cladding's done, whatever it is, close off that item. There's no more surprises. The PO has been paid in full. That's another whole webinar in itself.
Yeah.
Once you do have a line on there, you can close out the actuals and then you can start looking at the future.
Yeah. And just picking up Kira's sort of making the point too, there's a bit of a conversation around, when we're doing this cost tracking piece of work, however you want to do that. And we would absolutely agree, Kira, like doing it as you go, reconciling those costs as they're flowing in, and making sure that you're able to align those costs with where you thought they were supposed to be landing from a plan or a budget perspective. Making sure you're doing that comparison means that you've got a, almost real-time view of how profit is traveling for each of those jobs. So yeah, the idea, I guess, of doing it more post-mortem style, sort of, down the track, means that you miss all the opportunity if things are going sideways in terms of profit performance on the job to be able to claw it back through variations or, getting the team around to try and deliver that project in a sharper time frame. Easier said than done, but that is one way of going about it, and you can incentivize for that as well with the team. But there are a bunch of levers we can pull. But if we don't know that there's a problem, then all of that goes off the table, and you're just left with fate, to play out as it's going to play out. So yeah, trying to have that sort of, the word you used, Dan, cadence, this sort of operating rhythm of how you go about, getting good data, getting into the system, matching it up with the project estimates, the plan that you had in place, and then making sure that you're able to see what that's going to look like in the future, so that you're giving yourself a fighting chance to affect the outcome. I think we've gotten through that lightning pace. Feels like that was like 5 minutes worth of content.
Yeah.
Actually, it's 10:48. But I think that's the end of the road there. But I might, if you could just jump to the next slide there.
Yes.
I'm just going to go through our next step. So where to from here? We're going to be sending out that forecasting checklist, as I said. There'll be a video replay that we're sending out, so that you can look back on that, show your kids over Christmas, whatever the case might be. So please look out for that. That'll come out in the next day or so. I've just launched a poll. We, as always, are happy to unpack this probably at the next layer down. It's better as a one-to-one session for us to have conversations like, how do I build Xact and Xero talking to each other properly? What sort of templates do you guys have? At a business-wide level, how do I plot growth? All those sorts of things. I mean, Dan talking through quite a few things that he makes it sound easy, but they're actually really hard to do. So, happy to support those conversations in a more specific way, one-to-one. So please put your hand up for that if you want. Next slide, Dan. I've just got a couple more slides here before people drop off. Our next session we're doing in Christmas, just before Christmas, sorry, is our pre-Christmas cash flow forecasting. So we were talking about profit really today, whereas next month we're going to talk cold hard cash. And how do you join those two things together? And particularly, if you are in a spot of bother, what sort of levers you can play with. There are lots of different business models in construction. Some of them have your cash tied up with others for a while. So how do we remediate that sort of situation? So we'll be covering a whole lot of different things there, as well as a template that we use with our clients in that space. The last thing I wanted to mention, and we do have it in the poll, if you want to just jump to the next slide, we're running these strategic planning workshops. So if you remember, maybe right back at the beginning of the presentation, strategy is at the center of everything we do with our clients. We're offering this as a 3-month, half day a month workshop. It's $6,000. You're in the room with 10 other business owners. We're halfway through our first cohort with this at the moment. We're just about to hit our 3rd month. The feedback from this has been amazing. It really is giving people the kind of focus and direction they need to look at how they're going to grow the business properly and safely, and bring their whole team around what that strategy looks like as well. And it forces you to get off the tools and into our boardroom with some other business owners and start working on the business in a really meaningful way. So if you're interested in that, please tick the button that says expression of interest for our strategic planning workshop. That is it. We're very grateful for your time today. Very grateful for your time, Dan, and your wisdom as always. Please fill out that survey, guys, when you leave, so that we can get some feedback on today and ideas about what you'd like us to cover in the next webinar. And hopefully we'll see you in December for our cash flow workshop. We're wishing you all the best at the moment. I know it's a tricky time of the year. Make sure you look after yourself at the same time. It's a bit lonely sometimes as business owners. So please look after yourself, and all the best for your teams as well. All right. Thanks again, Dan. And thanks everyone for coming. We'll see you soon.
Thanks, everyone. See ya.
Bye-bye.